Welcome to Beyond Her Campus, celebrating 15 years. I'm Julianne Scriven, the Community Director at Her Campus, and we're excited to bring you this inspiring episode of our limited series podcast celebrating 15 years of Her Campus. In this series, we catch up with some of our most successful alumni, from news anchors and content creators to authors and mental health advocates. These women have incredible stories to share. Get ready for an insightful conversation filled with inspiration and advice. Let's jump in. Laurise, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond Her Campus, celebrating 15 years. You have had such a robust career in the media world, from freelance to full-time positions. This is a topic that comes up all the time for anybody who's working in the media space, of wanting to kind of dabble in both worlds. And so I can't wait to dive in and talk a little bit about your journey. But before we do, you are not only a Her Campus alumni, but you founded your Her Campus chapter at the University of Baltimore. Take us back to your undergrad experience. What inspired you to start your Her Campus chapter?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it feels like so long ago. It's crazy that Her Campus itself is in its 15th year already. But I had a little bit of an untraditional college experience. So I'm from Maryland, and I dreamed of going to the University of Maryland College Park because Juliana Rancic went there, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's a fabulous journalist. I have to follow in her exact footsteps. And financially, it just didn't work out for me. And so I ended up going to community college for 2 years. And then I later transferred over to a really tiny liberal arts college in the middle of Baltimore City with maybe 4,000 students. And frankly, I was just looking for my people. It is a commuter school, so some of the students sometimes are older. There's not a huge, frankly, campus lifestyle the way typical colleges work. And so I went out of my way to create those traditional college experiences for myself. And that's really where Her Campus came into the picture for me. I was looking for those clubs and those orgs that felt like, oh, this is where I'm going to meet my lifelong friends and stuff. And I frankly didn't find it. And so I used Her Campus as a tool to create that for myself.
Something that has come up episode over episode is that need for community and finding your people. I love what you mentioned about finding a space to create those lifelong friends and not seeing it and really kind of taking that on yourself and taking ownership over that path and saying okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do to try to find that. I had actually a really similar experience my freshman year of college. I was sort of floundering with trying to figure out people who not only I felt like would be somebody who I wanted to hang out with on the weekend, but I could also learn from them and would be people who would support me and challenge me to try on new avenues, whether that was through writing or through career, but even into other spaces that I never tried before, like pottery, which is such a tangent. But I really do think that something so powerful that Her Campus has done, that we've kind of seen that pattern, is finding those people who can have a foot in both spaces, where it's they're challenging you and encouraging you, but are also friends to you.
Yeah, definitely. I met one of my closest girlfriends, Pooja, through my Her Campus chapter. And while I was our founder and editor-in-chief and sort of managing all of our editing, she was older than I was. And so despite my leadership position, I felt like I gained somewhat of a big sister situation out of that. So that was really special.
It's so important, whether you're in college or whether you're in your career, to have somebody who is a little bit more advanced or a little bit more educated or a little bit just 2 steps farther in some area, so you can look to them almost as a mentor, but not totally, just somebody who you can talk to and bounce ideas off of, that can also support you and help you. And I say not totally like a mentor, because I do think having a relationship where you're really close but just a little bit farther away is really impactful. And so I'm so happy. And a little Pooja shout out as well on the podcast today too.
Love you, Pooji.
To speed us up, you are currently the social creative lead at Meta after being a freelance content strategist for 2 years. Before that, you were head of social at Refinery 29. What inspired the shift from a full time role to freelance and contract work back to a full time role?
I would have to say money. I'm going to keep it real. I found myself leaving media a lot, like traditional media, Refinery 29, because I feel like I hit like a pay ceiling and I was like
Mm.
putting my all into this content all the time. And it was such a huge part of my identity as well. Like I was Laurise from Refinery for many years. And I got older. We get older. And priorities have to change and shift. And so financial stability became something that was like, okay, this needs to move to the top of the pyramid. So like I left in the hopes and the dreams of taking the freelance thing really big and really just expanding my financial avenues. And I went back to corporate very quickly. I spent some time before that doing some freelance work for some old editor friends at Harper's Bazaar for a bit. I even did a little bit of freelance work for Refinery after like leaving. But I went back to corporate full time with Meta because my boss at the time, it's really interesting. While I was at Refinery, I was asked to be a guest on this show that they have called Social Skills. And Social Skills is like Instagram for businesses, like peek behind the curtain of your favorite Instagram accounts, like who runs those. You get to see who runs those and you get to hear all of the tea and all of the ways they think about the posts you like all the time. And I did an episode for them about my love for Refinery 29 Unbothered and how running that account was so special to me. And I talked about all of the community things and my strategy. And once I posted that I was leaving Refinery, the guy who produced that was like, do you want to come work for us? Like we already know your passion. We already know the way you work and build communities. We've heard all about your strategy in the interview we did with you, and we would love to just like talk. And so one, it felt just very natural. It felt very serendipitous. It didn't feel like this major mission where it was like, I need to go and work at Meta. It just kind of aligned. I'm like one of those like annoying woo-woo girls that's like, oh, wow, it's an alignment. The universe is telling me this is the thing. And of course, I was definitely like dazzled when the pay was significantly more than what I was doing at Refinery, despite leading a team at Refinery. So yeah, it happened kind of very fluid. And that's why I went back.
I think you have really zeroed in on some key advice where at some point in anyone's career, no matter if they're in media, if they are in a completely different field, you do have to understand that your priorities change and the definition of a dream job and your dream day to day change based off of goals and based off of age and based off of growing up. You might think that you're chasing a title or something like that when you're 22, 23, and then that shifts a little bit when you get a little bit older and you don't want to be as scrappy. You want to be a little bit more, to your point, stable and having your worth and the work that you're producing matching what your paycheck looks like.
Definitely. And it's interesting because as I come up on my third year at Meta, I am in a position where I do feel stable. I do feel comfortable. And I'm like, I definitely am not quitting my job, but I am in a space where I'm like, I would like to get back into my freelance bag in some capacity. And this time I can do it just for the passion. This time I can do the articles I pitch or the personal essays that I choose to write simply because of that joy. And I was getting that at magazines originally. I just was like, I don't know if this is enough to support me, frankly, right now in this climate. And so I'm excited to open that door again and allow it to be just something I do for fun. I feel like we don't do enough things just for fun.
And how refreshing, and truly congratulations on having that mindset and the ability to dive into something that you love and be able to do it because you love it, not because you have to do it. And I think whenever we're in a career field where our job is overlapped with our passion, some of that fire can get a little bit doused. And so I love the idea that you get to come back to it and do it because it's something that you like to do, that challenges you, that's fun. And I think the audience and readers are totally going to get that as well when you're there.
Yeah.
You did bring up Unbothered, Refinery 29's media hub for the Black and Brown community. Tell me about how that came to be. What was the process like creating the platform? Tell us about Unbothered.
Yeah. I mean, I always joke that I did not go to grad school, but I went to Refinery 29. And I don't think it's like this crazy secret that like the brand itself has changed so much over the years. And I feel really lucky to have experienced it in what many people would say its heyday, right? I joined Refinery honestly just after Hillary Clinton had lost and women were rallying. It was like a time to be alive. And we were just passionate. And in this like bubble of really powerful, strong women going to the office every day, there was a section of Black women who were like, yes, we also are strong women. We also were with her. But somehow in this like super feminist dream world we've created, we don't really see ourselves reflected. And my first role at the company was not head of social, it was community manager. And at the time, that role meant that I read all of our comments on all of our channels and even on the website as well. And while a lot of people, even myself at the time, was kind of like, oh, this is such an entry level position, it was such a tool. I was able to read messages from women saying, like, I clicked on this natural hair story as a Black woman thinking I would see myself. And I saw some really cute white women with like beach waves. And while I think they look fab, it's just I'm struggling to find myself. And so in the spirit of like mentorship, like, again, I was really lucky to have this woman named Alessandra Hickson on my social team. She was one of the, I don't know if she was the senior social editor at the time or just a social editor, but she was higher on the ranks than me. She was older than me. She was smart. She was cool. She was beautiful. And she came to me and one of the other Black women on the social team who had just started, our weekend editor, Nikki Tucker. And she was like, I am trying to build a social channel that caters to distributing Refinery 29 content that speaks directly to Black women. Are you guys going to help me or not? And I was like, are you kidding? I'm so in. And my role with her really lied a lot in branding and identity because that is one of my passions. I was actually a graphic design major declared for the first 2 years of college and went into a broader media production major. But I loved visuals. I love that synergy between visuals and language, which is probably why I gravitated towards Instagram as a platform. But in general, I got to help pick out our brand colors. I worked with the illustration team to figure out like what patterns were going to be the ones that popped up in our content packaging regularly. I also, again, just jack of all trades. I'm a writer. I mean, everyone there was, but tone of voice was huge for me. And so we spent a lot of time being like, what does she sound like? What does she do? What is she interested in? What gives her the ick? Like really developing out like who this woman is, who this unbothered girl was. And it wasn't just the three of us. Like we created this like monster team of just like the Black girls from every pod. So like, yes, it kind of started with the Black girl in social, but the Black girls from the entertainment writing team came and joined. The Black girls from the project management team came and joined. The Black women who ran the office facilities came and joined because we all just wanted this to work. And when it came to convincing leadership to take the bet on us, it was tricky because we're pushing this because we feel this fire inside ourselves, right? And how do you explain that fire, right? How do you tell maybe at the time I'm like, what, maybe I think I was 24 when we launched Unbothered. I was a 24-year-old girl straight out of college. And we had the task of telling this like very high up white woman CEO why she should be thinking about us. And we quickly recognized, frankly, we can't lead with that fire in our belly. You can't go into a pitch solely on emotion. And that's just how it is, not even for building a sub brand or some like a large IP. That's for any pitch. You have to have data, you have to have backings, you have to have research, you have to have findings. We were like, my soul needs this to happen. But at the end of the day, got to be a strategist. You recognize that this is a business. And how do I prove that this is a good business decision? We pulled numbers on how many Black women showed up to events. We pulled numbers on Black women and shopping. We basically were able to show that they were leaving money on the table by excluding, or maybe I don't even know if excluding feels harsh, but like just forgetting about a group of women. And we're like, you could be doubling attendance if you made this palatable to more than one type of woman. And they were like, heck yeah. Like, this is something that, one, emotional piece, this is a do good thing. We are a do good company, but also it's going to make us money. You know what I mean? Like, this is gold. And so the first few months we totally had to, or months, year, we had to prove ourselves. Like, we had to show, hey, like, this is your ROI. And at one point we were the fastest growing social channel in like Refinery 29 history, because God knows that place had 1 billion channels. And so for them to see the engagement rates that we were able to produce, like I can say this because I ran Refinery 29 Main and Unbothered, but we were creaming Refinery 29 Main. And I remember being like, wow, this was brilliant.
Absolutely. And I think part of the brilliance was being able to understand the emotion and understand that a company wants to hear those terms that you just used, like ROI, money left on the table. What was that like to try to have to strike that balance? Because I'm sure it was a conversation that you all had as a group.
Yeah. I mean, literally that. Imagine a giant glass conference room full of 50 Black women just brainstorming and being like, what if this? Someone's on the whiteboard writing things down or scratching things out. And so we were just bouncing ideas off of each other. I think one of our strengths was the diversity in the room. Like, I know that I just said it was all Black women, but we all know Black women are not a monolith. And so, yes, there was like little 24-year-old me being like, this is our girl, this is the brand, this is what we look like, how we show up. But there was also Black women from like the finance team. There were Black women from all, maybe not all, but like the major sectors of the company. And so being able to hear about business needs from people who were closer to that side of house as well was really helpful. One of the women who leads the team now to this day, Chelsea Saunders, she was on the comms team. And so also having a Black woman on the comms team to be like, don't say that, or maybe spin it this way, was really helpful.
Wow. Was there a moment with Unbothered that just totally stuck out to you where you were like, this is making a huge impact on readership externally?
Yeah. I mean, I live in Brooklyn. I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. It's a huge hub for creatives and Black creatives in specific. Like, traditionally, Bed-Stuy has always been that. Like, you think about Jay-Z, you think about all of the people who come from this neighborhood and all the talent that's there. But I would walk down the street and Black women would be like, hey, it's you. Like, I love Unbothered. Or I saw that thing you posted and it explained exactly what I was trying to say and I didn't have the words to say it. Or like having women in real life come to me really often and say that that content impacted their lives was really special. I would say one of the other like moments where it really hit me was we had a series called Dear Black Love. I believe they still do it. They better. I love that series. But essentially, it's like bringing in a couple. It doesn't have to be cis hetero, and having them talk about what it's like to love a Black woman. It was an episode I produced starring my good friend Crystal Beer Bottles and Chainsaws, if anybody follows her on TikTok or Instagram. But she and her, at the time, girlfriend, Keish, were just like the cutest freaking couple ever. And they were so affectionate and lovey-dovey, and they had such a beautiful love story. And I wanted to capture that. And so I directed it. I interviewed them on camera, and that video went viral. And Ava DuVernay was like, I want to make this a movie. Lena Waithe was chiming in. Like, so many people validated the work we were doing. And those really major validations were also able to put us in a position to start monetizing the brand. I believe we didn't monetize the brand until maybe 1 or 2 years in. It was something we were like, yes, this is going to make you a lot of money, but trust us. We have to get them to trust. Like, this will make you money, but we still need Black women to believe that this is really what we say it is. We didn't want people to be like, oh, they created this Black brand, and now, like, the second day they have like a Dark and Lovely ad on for the perm box the next day. It feels just ingenuine and like inauthentic. We were like, we want to protect this as like a really safe space just for culture to thrive, at least for a year or two. And then you guys can sell different like ad placements or what have you. And so, yeah, we were able to sell some of those ad placements and stuff because we had those very public accolades and moments. So, yeah, definitely some really fun milestones there.
You mentioned the opportunity to direct your friends. You have such a diverse range of skill sets with writing and directing and social work and community management. How has wearing all of those hats impacted your ability to take on new projects and take on new ideas?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting growing up. People were like, you need to pick writing or design. You need to pick visuals or words. And I, in community college, was writing articles and designing the layout for the magazine that it would go on, the spread for my own piece. And I would direct our like cover shoots as well. I mean, this is community college. There was like barely anyone who wanted to do it as well. I was like an overzealous community college kid. And I remember like enjoying all the facets of media production, and people were just like, it's cute now while you're in college, but there's just no world where you're going to be on the design team at like 17 magazine and get to write articles. It's just pick something and become a master at it. And I just couldn't help it. I think they call it like a slashy. I am just a slashy. I think maybe I'm just like greedy. I want my hands in everything. And I think it really has allowed me to have the career that I have today because it made me a bit of a yes man or a yes woman. Like, there was never a situation where it was like I was asked to do something and I was, oh, I can't do that. I don't do that. That's not what I do. I just know I make really cool things. And a lot of things can fall into that category. So I think it just opened the door for me to say yes.
I think it speaks to such a visionary landscape and almost a futuristic mentality from community college to now, where now the idea of visuals and words not being copacetic and not having that synergy is almost impossible to think about. When we think of articles or content that's going live, we think of it through a lens of how is this also going to look on a website? How is this going to appear on a feed? Is it going to make somebody stop scrolling or stop and not only read the caption, but link out into a different space? I think it really does speak to a visionary view of the media landscape.
A few years ago, Elisa Benson, who was the digital director of Cosmopolitan and 17 magazine for years and now is one of my dear coworkers at Meta, she said something in a very small room to a bunch of media people. And she said, your social media editors are the editor-in-chiefs of tomorrow. And I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'm a social media editor, so I loved to hear those words. But also it's so true. When you think about what the work is, it is everything. It is 360. There is no social editor out there who works in media who is like, I don't do that. We do everything. And to be able to tell a story from every angle and think about every single detail of how this narrative is being put into the world, it's a gift. And I think some people would call it like jack of all trades, master of none, but I think it's a gift.
I think so too. And I also think the ability to be jack of all trades, master of none is even more so now beneficial, where you need to be able to go from still image to TikTok video, vertical video to whatever the next social media platform that dominates our time and our energy looks like. I think that's such a skill set, and the ability to say like, oh, I'm excited about that and I'm going to learn how to do it is such a crucial desirability and to have as anybody working in any media space.
Yeah, especially today.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about AI
Yeah.
and how AI is it's in every conversation. There's good and there is a mix of almost fearfulness with it as well.
Yes, there is.
There's so much that we don't know about AI. There's mixed opinions with its very existence. And then you hear other people like, well, this is how you're listening to Spotify is with AI. So I think that there's such a lack of understanding around it. Meta has been spearheading so many initiatives with AI. How do you see AI being an asset to the media landscape?
I mean, I just used AI to write the last caption on my personal Instagram last night. And so that's a prime example. I'm obviously biased. I work there, but I use Meta AI every day. Like I told you, I have a bit of a background in design, but like I really like using image generation. I know that a lot of people feel threatened, like, oh, like this is my craft. And I think that that craft still has such a space in the landscape. But if I'm like, oh, I wonder what I would look like with blonde dreadlocks, like I could just have Meta AI show me what I look like with different hair. So I don't know. I think it's definitely misunderstood. I think that a lot of people also feel like it's something they don't have a choice with. But I think that you do have a choice. Like I saw some posts like I'm opting out of AI on social media, and it's just kind of like just don't click it if it's scary. I totally get it. Like I do get it. I'm not always an early adopter. I'm just not. I'm a little cynical. I'm a little jaded. I'm a New Yorker. I totally get it. But if you're a creative, it's just really fun.
Yeah, and I think opting out is fine if that like is going to help you have a healthy relationship with social media. If that's where you need to draw that line. I had an aunt who said she would opt out of texting. And I remember hearing that being like, this is how I'm talking to my friends on summer vacation. This is like a form of connection at the time. And it still is, but it's fine to opt out in the immediate, but that doesn't solve your lack of hesitancy down the line. And I think like you don't necessarily have to be a super early adopter, but recognize that AI is going to be a little bit part of our journey for years, decades, the rest of time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who is France based, and he is a crazy cool, like digital artist and was for years. And when like image generation really became like super popular, he really was an early adopter. And to see how it has not cannibalized his work, but just like leveled it up. His handle is Zach Easy if anyone wants to check it out. But it's like, the things he makes looks like a dream, and he is able to just take his craft and just 10x it. And again, I don't think that everyone should feel like they need to. If you're like, I do hand lettering, I only want to do hand lettering, that's it. That's fine. And that's okay. Like, not everyone needs to be on the same train. I do think professionally, do put yourself at a bit of risk for not growing with the industry. I have a lot of friends who were like photo editors and things. And for years, Their roles were very much producing shoots and literally like manually editing images. And now they're like, oh, now I have to get into my like wordsmith bag a little bit because now I need to learn how to generate prompts as a skill. And while your brain might not be a super like wordy brain, like you're an image person or whatever, that resistance to learn how to generate prompts might be the thing that keeps you from a job. It might be the thing that has someone say like, oh, wow, this person, they're neck and neck, but this one person knows how to also like make it an AI. And I would be bummed if that was me.
It sounds like almost you should use AI as a tool and see it as another thing that you can put into your toolkit rather than replacing an entire piece of your craft. It's exactly there to help.
Exactly. It is a helper. I mean, shout out to the people who have found out a way to make it fully take over their entire work process. I personally think AI is an amazing tool. And again, like I said, I did my caption last night. I'm a writer, but it does this thing where it makes streamlining information and research just a lot simpler. I did a post yesterday on this like therapy technique that I was put onto by my therapist. I'm one of those girls who's like talking about her therapist all the time on the internet. And I was like, let me not mess this up when I tell my followers about the goodness I received. Let me make sure I'm using correct terminology. Let me make sure that I am disseminating the information responsibly. And that really helped me. And then I go in and add my little emojis and change little wordings to make it sound like me and jazz it up and delete things that's just like, oh, wow, love you AI. But that is so verbose. I'm not saying this whole 5 paragraphs. But I still use my edit skills. I think that it's a tool, exactly like you said. It's not the entire thing.
And I think that, to your point, it allows for you to share something that has made an impact or is really meaningful responsibly. And what an asset if we could have people be sharing their mental health tips, their physical health tips safely and not in a way where it is coming off as misinformation because they don't totally understand how to share that. So I really love that example because I think that as somebody who, I don't want to jump and say I'm fearful of AI, maybe like wary is a little bit, apprehensive is a little bit of a safer word to use for myself, but that is such a wonderful example of how AI can create a safer world digitally and in our actual offline universe.
Totally.
I do want to ask you, especially as somebody who works at Meta, our current members and everybody who has been a Her Campus alum who's now working in the media space, and generally anybody who has an Instagram account or any social media account in general, we are always getting asked, what are your algorithm tips? So do you have any insider hacks on how to make the algorithm work for you?
Yeah, it's so funny. I did a video on exactly this, but like the TLDR is one, you have to think about each surface feature of the platform as its own sort of world. Like your algorithm for stories is not the same algorithm for feed. And so I think we always are competing with those. Even the algorithm for the explore page is different than your timeline when you're scrolling. And so thinking about which one is the algorithm you want to optimize for is really important. I also think that it's no secret that we have moved into a vertical video world. You know, I personally, in my own like at Laurise IRL strategy, try to prioritize reels. I recognize that the algorithm is set up that way based on human behaviors. Like people have just grown a liking to vertical video more. It just literally is what it is. I would also say that for me, at least, like carousels are really great too. I think sometimes people are always just like, oh, it's a reels only world, but don't sleep on your carousels, people. I don't know if you guys ever have like scrolled and seen the first slide of a carousel and then scrolled like the next day or a few hours later and saw the same content, but the algorithm served you a different slide on that same carousel. the algorithm will do that. And like that carousel was shown to you multiple times, but different slides. And so that's increasing that post's reach, right? So don't sleep on your carousels. We all love a monthly dump. Don't stop those.
Absolutely. Those are wonderful. And I think it's reassuring to hear that right now, prioritize reels, but don't forget the other pieces of your post with your stories. And don't forget the carousels, and almost like look at the anatomy of what you're presenting and figure out what is the medium for this within this one medium.
Exactly that. We all know stories is the medium for ephemeral content that we don't need to live forever. Like, come with me right now in this moment. Let me take you with me content. I also like to think about stories as like feed. You come for the feed, you stay for the stories.
I love that.
Because like you're probably not growing because of your stories, right? Like sure. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on this. But I don't think that the algorithm will ever show you like some rando story that you don't follow. So unless someone goes out of the way to send that story to a friend who wasn't following, the exposure to new audience is not really there. But stories is really that place where you get to talk to the people who already follow you. You give them a reason to not unfollow you. That's where you can really add some value. And it's personally one of my favorite places on Instagram.
Mine too. I feel like stories is really the spot where I can almost get to the core of Julianne, or get to, when I'm working on a brand, get to like what that brand really represents, whether that's education or on my own, being a little bit more cheeky with my followers or with my friends. And it kind of humanizes the accounts a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely does. And don't even get me started on close friend territory.
That's my pride and joy, is my close friends. Before you go, we had so much fun having you on Beyond Her Campus, celebrating 15 years. We have 3 rapid fire questions that we are asking all of our guests on the pod. The first one is, what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
I would tell my 21-year-old self that you need to be open to wherever your career pathway takes you, because, girl, you're going to be surprised.
Be open. I love that advice. Second is, what is something you are looking forward to?
I am looking forward to this weekend. My cousin and her daughter are coming down, and we're having a girls' weekend.
Oh my gosh, so fun. Our last one is, tell listeners where they can find you and keep up with your work.
Yeah, I am at Laurise IRL on all platforms. LAURISEIRL.
Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond Her Campus, celebrating 15 years. I had so much fun diving into all things AI, as well as your career journey. We can't wait to keep up with you.
Thanks so much, girl. See you soon.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond Her Campus, celebrating 15 years. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you loved this episode, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave a review. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more incredible stories from our amazing alums. Until then, HCXO.